Hello folks, welcome back to my channel. About 3 weeks ago I was approached by Svaboni, or SV Bonnie, depending on how you want to pronounce it, who were asking me if I'd like to do a little review of their entry-level electronic eyepiece stroke planetary camera. And my channel, if you've seen any of the videos, I'm kind of mad keen on people dipping their toe into astrophotography using the equipment that they've got with minimum additional expense. So the opportunity to have a little go at this entry-level camera was one I grabbed with both hands. My name's John and I make videos on camping, astronomy and walking. If you like what you see in this video, then please check my channel out, as there may be others that interest you there. But in the meantime, let's crack on with today's video. Svaboni are based in China and they make wallet-friendly equipment for astronomers and astrophotographers, including refractor telescopes, filters, cameras and eyepieces and accessories. And the bit of kit they sent me was the SV105 electronic eyepiece stroke planetary camera. Unboxing is an uncomplicated affair. You get a fairly plain cardboard box with the company name and camera model number on it, and on opening the first thing you see is an instruction sheet, a quick start guide. There's a cleaning cloth, a USB 2 cable to connect the camera to the computer, and the camera itself, which just has one connection on it for connecting up to the computer. There's no CD or anything like that with drivers included in the box. The quick start guide gives you everything you need in order to get the camera working and points you in the direction of SharpCap as a data acquisition program if you're using a Windows computer. The camera is powered via the USB connecting the computer and has a metal housing, so feels surprisingly robust. This is the end of the cable that you plug into the back of the camera, and this is the other end, which has got two USB 2 connections. I wasn't sure initially what this was for, but I think if you've got two USB 2 connections next to each other on your computer, you can plug them both in to get extra power. I haven't, so I was planning on just plugging one of them in. The camera is a 2 megapixel camera. It's got a 1¼ inch nose, which means that it can fit in any eyepiece holder star diagonal. The sensor in the camera is a 1/3 inch CMOS sensor, and the camera is capable of giving full HD output. The first thing I did was to download SharpCap, which is free, and plug the camera into my computer, and the camera is plug and play, so the computer immediately recognizes it. Having got the camera plugged into the computer, you then click on camera along the top of the SharpCap screen and select SV105 from the drop down list. You'll now see a camera control area appear on the right hand side of the screen, and if you now take the cap off the camera and wave it about a bit, pointing at a window, you'll see light and dark appearing on the screen. This is telling you that the camera is sensing the light and is working. And that right hand side of the screen contains things like exposure time and gain that enable you to adjust the settings on the camera to get the best image you can. So that was the unboxing and initial setup of the camera done, and I was quite relieved to find that it was dead straightforward. I'm a bit of a technical numpty and don't like anything too complicated. SharpCap downloaded straight away, the camera was found straight away by my computer, and when I plugged the two in and waved the camera around, the camera could sense the light, so that was great. So I was now mad keen to get out and test it on the moon. And unfortunately, as is common with anybody getting any new astro gear, it was then cloudy for the next 3 weeks, or the moon wasn't around. And eventually the moon came back, but I was struggling to get a clear night to test the camera out. Eventually curiosity got the better of me, and I could see that the moon was up even though it was an hour before sunset, and it was being obscured on and off by clouds. But I thought this was at least a chance to test out the camera's ability to operate as a electronic eyepiece rather than attempt to take video or proper video of the moon and convert that into a photograph, as that wouldn't have been possible. So I figured it'd be worth having a go anyway, and finding out where the focus point was and all that sort of thing on the telescope that I was intending to use. So yeah, off I popped outside to see what I could get. The kit I used was a Celestron Nexstar SLT Altaz mount that was going to track the moon, and an Altair Astro Starwave 70 ED refractor. So initially I pointed the telescope at some distant trees using a normal visual eyepiece and used that to get an approximate focus point. I then put the 105 camera in the place of the eyepiece and fine-tuned the focus there until I could see the trees coming up on the computer screen. Theoretically, you shouldn't be putting the camera straight into the star diagonal, because the star diagonal has glass elements in it which slightly reduce the quality of the image. However, if you don't use a star diagonal, you'd have to use an extension piece to get focus, which I didn't have. So for the purposes of this exercise, I thought I'd do what most people would do and just stick the SV105 straight in the eyepiece. So having got my focus more or less sorted out, I now slewed the mount across to the moon and looked to see what was coming up as the clouds were coming and going across the moon. This did prove the point that the camera was capable of operating as a electronic eyepiece, and I thought it looked quite eerie at the end of the day. I was actually quite pleased. It was a bit difficult getting focus sorted out because the moon was coming and going so much, quite apart from the wobbling of the atmosphere. But nonetheless, I was quite pleased with what was coming up on the screen, and showed the camera's potential for being an electronic eyepiece for maybe outreach work or for people who find it hard to look through normal eyepieces. So although on this night out it was disappointing not to get a sort of clear shot at the moon to take a photograph and stuff, nonetheless I was able to do a bit of experimentation, get my focus point more or less sorted out, and it was nice to sort of see the moon in this sort of degree of detail. So yeah, I was going to look forward to having another go on another night, and just as I'd packed away, of course the clouds cleared up, but by this time it was too late, as the moon was disappearing below the roof line of an adjacent house. A couple of days later it looked like it was going to be clear for an hour or so, so I quickly set up using the practice session that I'd had from a couple of days beforehand and putting that to good use. The moon was quite low, but nonetheless that was going to be good enough for me, and I hope for the best. I was immediately greeted by this lovely image of the video feed on my computer. So this is a live feed coming off the camera, and I took two recordings from this, one of 2000 frames and one of 1000 frames, which I was going to use to convert into an individual image later on. And I also messed about a little bit with the gain to vary the brightness of the image just to see what happened. You can also hopefully see here how using the camera as an electronic eyepiece is a great way of enabling you to share your viewing with others, like your friends and family in the garden. I then decided to try and get a more close-up view of some of the lunar features by using a 2x Barlow lens and putting that in the imaging train, and well, basically just to see what would happen, what the camera would make of that. I needed to tweak the focus slightly to take account of having put a Barlow lens in the system, but this was the video feed that was coming out of the camera straight away. The image is quite wobbly because I'm shooting through a lot of atmosphere to get this, but you can clearly see some nice features on the surface there, you can see a mountain range to the left-hand side of the Sea of Serenity, which is a sort of grey blob right in the middle of the picture. So I had a play about sort of zooming in and out on the image and stuff just to see what the quality would be, and yeah, it was quite good. I was quite surprised at the level of detail that you were still able to see as you blew the image up. So as before, I took a recording of a couple of minutes, I think, extract from the live feed footage that you can see, with a view to converting that into a still photo later, and then the clouds came in. Okay, I've now got a couple of segments of video that are made up typically of, say, a couple of thousand exposures, and each exposure is a very short exposure length in the realms of tenths or hundredths of a second. And what I want to do now is to take those little strips of video and turn them into a still photograph. Now, the reason that it's difficult just to take a photograph of the moon is that, as you saw from the videos, you're shooting through quite a lot of atmosphere, and that's a little bit like dropping a coin to the bottom of the swimming pool and looking at that coin. The whole image sort of shimmers away because of the water that's above it, and our atmosphere is a fluid like water, and it creates a similar effect, so you end up with this shimmering image. But if you look through the eyepiece at the moon or a planet, you'll see that every now and again you get a crystal clear image and then it's gone. And the object of taking the video is, of the, say, 2,000 frames or so, there will be a number of crystal clear frames within them. And the idea is that you put the video into a piece of software which analyzes every individual frame and selects the best images out of that video, maybe the best 10% or best 20%, and stacks them together to create a much better photograph than you see from looking at the video, essentially. And this is what I want to do next. The software that's used to do this is typically free, and one of the most common ones is called Registax, and the one that I use is called AutoStackArt. Both are fairly similar. I just find AutoStackArt a slightly simpler program to use. So that's what I'm going to do now. If anybody wants an easy to use tutorial on AutoStackArt, there's a guy called Dylan O'Donnell, he's an Australian chap, has done an absolutely fantastic video on how to process the moon and get a picture of the moon out of this free program, and I'll put the link for that in the description, and it's a step-by-step, very easy to follow process. But now I'm just going to show you the photographs. So here's the first image taken with the camera pointing straight into the star diagonal of the telescope, and I was very pleased with this. I can see quite a lot of detail in there, and the image is nice and crisp. So yeah, all in all, I thought this was really nice. I then cropped that image in to get a couple of other pictures just to see how the main image stood up to cropping, and as you can hopefully see here, there is actually quite a lot of detail visible. The Sea of Serenity is easily visible to the upper right, and you can see it's kind of bordering mountain range that just brushes the edge of it. Yeah, I was quite surprised to see this level of detail in this picture. I then turned my attention to the footage shot through the 2x Barlow lens, and again you can see the Sea of Serenity to the sort of centre right, and the mountain range brushing the left hand side of it. Hopefully you can see here that the camera's picked up an incredible amount of detail, and you get more detail out by using the Barlow lens than you do by cropping into the larger picture. So overall I was really chuffed with the results that I got. So what did I make of the Swaborny SV105 camera? Well, I think for the money it's a stunning little camera. It fulfills two functions. One is an electronic eyepiece and the other is a planetary camera. So first of all, looking at it as a planetary camera, as I've said, I was quite astonished at the images that I got of the moon. I want to try it out on Jupiter next, which is approaching opposition at the moment, I think, but it's really low on my horizon, so I need to get away from home, somewhere where I've got a really low southern horizon. But I'll be very interested to see how that works. In order to do that, I'll need to fit the camera to a longer focal length scope, which I've got. Otherwise the image will simply be too small. But yeah, as an entry-level planetary camera, you really can't go wrong. At the time of filming, this camera's under £40. I think it's £35 something in the UK. And this compares with other planetary cameras that I've got that are, I think I've got one that's 3 times the cost of this and one that's 6 or 7 times the cost of this. So what do I think Sfaboni have had to cut out in order to get this camera to a particular price point? Well, the first thing you notice is that the maximum exposure time that you can get is ½ a second or 500 milliseconds. This means that the camera is specifically limited to planetary use. You couldn't, or I couldn't anyway, with a small telescope pick a star out using the camera. There simply wasn't enough light getting in the exposure time. This means that you wouldn't be able to use it for any kind of deep sky objects at all, even the very bright ones, and you wouldn't be able really to use it as a guide camera either. But being fair, that's not what this is intended to be. It's intended to be an entry-level planetary camera. And if you're a visual astronomer and you're thinking about dipping your toe into the world of astrophotography, then this is a really good place to start, because you learn about the new techniques that you need to know about without spending an awful lot of money. So it enables you to mess about with software. The SharpCap software that's used with this camera is used actually with a load of other cameras as well. So once you've learnt it on this camera, if you then want to go and spend £500 on a much more sophisticated camera, you've actually already learnt the basics for, at the moment, £35. I did notice as I was recording some of the video capture that the camera does tend to drop frames. I think out of about 2,000 frames I lost about 1/10 of those, but that's simply because there is, isn't a huge memory buffer in here. But again, that's not what you'd expect for this amount of money. So, I would say that for somebody tempted to dabble with astrophotography, this is a really good starting point. One thing I was impressed with was the ease of use. I plugged it in, computer spotted it straight away, didn't have to download any other drivers. SharpCap went on my computer straight away. There is a paid version of SharpCap that does more sophisticated stuff like focusing aids and things, but you don't need to opt for that in order to drive this camera. So the software is free and readily available. The stacking programs that you use with it, Registax or AutoStackArt, are also free. So the only cost you've got is the camera itself, and you can get quite a lot of experience simply by using this. The other obvious use for this camera is as an electronic eyepiece, and I know for myself I struggle to spend a lot of time peering down an eyepiece. I'll kind of look a bit, come away, look a bit, come away, and I have to take my glasses off really to get a decent look down the eyepiece because the glasses sort of get in the way. So if, like me, you find it difficult to spend a long time peering down eyepieces, then the use of this as an electronic eyepiece is quite a luxury at the end of the day. I had a live feed of the moon up on my computer, as you saw, and I just spent
quite a lot of time just sitting there watching the live feed. It was lovely. And you know, if you could tempt your family to come out and have a look, I'm sure they'd be stunned as well. If you do any type of outreach astronomy, then this is perfect, because you can get 6 or 7 people looking at the computer screen in one go. So astronomy clubs, particularly those in schools perhaps that, you know, haven't got huge budgets, could buy this and derive quite a lot of use out of it. So there we are. If I had to sum up the camera in a few words, I think it would simply be that you can't go wrong with it. If you're interested in buying the camera, I've put a series of links in the description below. There's about 4 of them. They're eBay shops, and different ones for different parts of the world. Essentially, they're either Sfaboni eBay shops or Retovis eBay shops. They're actually all part of the same company. So, you know, if you are interested, have a little click on the links there. There's a load of other descriptive stuff about the cameras within that link. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you've enjoyed the images that came out of this little camera, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Cheerio.